I'm Kenneth, a relationship coach and a psychotherapist. Every relationship is different and every breakup is different. Work with me and you'll get professional help on your situation. And if you're in no contact, focused on personal growth, my workbook series, The Knowledge, will help you make changes like you've never made before. Available now at AskCraig.net. Hi there, I'm Coach Kenneth.
And I'm Coach Victoria.
And in today's video, we're going to be talking about my ex said we're not compatible.
I've heard this one before.
We're not compatible. Yeah, and it comes up in one particular breakup more than others. And we're going to get to that in a minute because sometimes you hear people say we're not compatible. And you know, there can be truth to that,
right?
But we do often see it in one particular situation more than the others. And you're going to talk about that in a second. But yes, you do have to think about compatibility in a relationship. You do. I mean, there are some things that are going to be deal breakers. And everybody's deal breakers are completely different because we all have different ideas on how we want to live our life, where we want to live, how many kids we have, what we want to do for our career, how we may want to travel, all kinds of different things. So compatibility is a factor, but sometimes it is a bit of an excuse.
Right.
When do you think it is the excuse?
Well, we've touched on this before in a different video, an earlier video on compatibility and breakups, where we talk about how compatibility can often be an excuse. And this is important because on the surface, it doesn't seem like it. On the surface, you're thinking, okay, this is a legitimate reason as to why we should go our separate ways. But if you dig into it and start to notice, wait a minute, but we had been compatible for the past 5 years. We had our goals aligned. We had things planned out and we were both on the same page. How can compatibility really be the issue here?
It doesn't add up.
Right. Sometimes what can happen is that compatibility can be an avoidance technique to avoid talking about the real issues for the breakup. And now this can be either conscious or unconscious. And I want to make this clear because to your ex, they might be bringing this up from a genuine place of, man, I really think this is it. I really do feel overwhelmed in this relationship. And that makes me feel like we are incompatible. And they might not have an understanding about attachment styles or why it is that they feel overwhelmed or smothered or trapped in the relationship. So pay attention to these things because you might come to your ex with this information of, I figured it out, it's not compatibility, it's our attachment styles. And they're going to say, what? You're crazy. Get out of here.
Yeah, a lot of people, when they learn about attachment styles after the breakup, they're like, should I tell my ex what I learned?
Yeah.
And we did a video on that recently. Because it really doesn't help.
Right.
Okay.
And for the avoidant, it's much easier to blame compatibility than it is to talk about that feeling of being overwhelmed or even that fear of intimacy. When I get too close to you, something inside me doesn't feel right and I don't know what it is. That takes vulnerability and sometimes people don't have that.
Yeah.
And
they're scared.
Right. Compatibility might be even an easier route than telling you that your breath stinks. You know,
by the way.
Right. If there
I didn't want to tell you.
Right.
But
If there is a complaint or something that's bothering you in a relationship, sometimes we struggle to be honest with our partner and be authentic and tell them what's really going on and try to work on those issues. For many people, it's easier just to end it and call it a day instead of having to go into it in the uncomfortableness of sitting with, what if I offend somebody? Or what if they see me as this evil person? You know, so compatibility can be a Band-Aid on a breakup sometimes.
As an excuse, yeah. The avoidants use it more than anybody. That you're sitting there when you're confused and it's not adding up to you. A lot of times it's just because they're avoidant and they don't know what to say or do, so they say something like compatibility. But compatibility could be a real issue. You want to jump in?
I did. I wanted to say one more thing before we move on.
Okay.
That even for anxious people, this can be an excuse. It's a lot more rare, but it can happen. Let's say there's two anxious people that get together and you notice, okay, I'm not feeling that intensity that I feel when I'm with an avoidant, that I need their attention and I'm trying to seek for it. And so they notice, man, this other person's way too available. It's uncomfortable. It makes me feel like there's no chase here. There's no passion.
Yeah.
And so at that point, an anxious person might say, listen, we're not compatible. We're both just too anxious. And once again, this can be an unconscious thing that's happening.
Yeah.
So just be aware of these different possibilities.
Yeah. But we're just sharing the one that we see often. But there are real reasons that people would not be compatible, right? There are real deal breakers that people want to live their life differently. And sometimes you can't negotiate. Like maybe you can't negotiate where you're going to live. You certainly can't negotiate how many kids you're going to have. Like, you want 3, I want 2. We're going to have 2.5. I mean, somebody ultimately would have to sacrifice.
Right.
But if somebody says, I don't want any kids, and the other person's like, I definitely want kids, sometimes that is a real issue that can't be worked out. I've seen that one recently.
Yeah, and same with marriage. You know, some people have been badly burned in previous marriages, and they just have this value inside of them of, I am not going to get married ever again. I don't want the government in my relationships. That is their worldview. They are set on that. And so being with a partner who has always wanted to get married from the time that they were very young, you know, and always valued having that level of commitment in the eyes of the law, and that being very important to them, that can be a major incompatibility, and actually one that I see quite often too.
Yeah, I do too. I saw somebody recently that the woman really wanted to get married. The guy was freaked out about it. He was avoidant, broke up with her. So it happens, you know, and if both people don't want to change their position, then you might have a real deal breaker and you have to go your separate ways. You know, that's up for each couple to decide. Ultimately, as a couple would be healthier talking about it. Some people don't give you that and they don't talk to you, and it's frustrating.
Yeah.
But there are other issues, such as religion, that, you know, people have different ideas on how they want to spend their life with their spirituality, what beliefs they have, and sometimes it's incompatible. And so that could be a real reason that you couldn't be with somebody.
Right, and that can spill over into lifestyle if you really break it down. This can include things like eating habits. This can include things like what you do on the weekends, how much time you spend in church or temple, you know, certain traditions and
the
holidays.
gym. That's a big one too.
Yeah.
Like people that are into fitness, sometimes, like I've seen people over the years that'll get really into fitness and they'll leave the partner that isn't into fitness. And so this one person is getting really fit in the gym, they're working out all the time, and then the other partner's sitting at home watching TV, out of shape. I'm not judging, but the other person, the fitness person, doesn't like it, and they don't want to be with somebody who doesn't want to get fit with them.
Right. Lifestyle incompatibilities are a real thing. And same goes with if you have a very social partner who likes to go out and has a huge social circle, and that you're the complete opposite. Sometimes it can work, but once again, it depends, and it's a spectrum.
Yeah. Sometimes you just have a very different personality, and you can't figure out a way to get along, right?
This is tough. This is very tough, especially with humor styles. Sometimes I find if my humor isn't compatible with somebody else's, it's a no-go. If you can't laugh at my silly jokes, I'm sorry, we can't be friends. It's just how it is. So compatibility can look very different to each person depending on what's important to them, core beliefs, values, worldview, and lifestyle. And also deal breakers, which is another one that you touched on too.
Yeah, so maybe somebody likes to do drugs. Casually, they want to use them recreationally. And somebody may say, no, I don't even want to date somebody who smokes weed here or there.
Right.
I've seen that too.
Or if somebody's in recovery, you know, I could see how dating somebody who's still active in the drug lifestyle, that would not be compatible whatsoever.
Yep, and I have seen that too.
So as people change, compatibility also changes. So we've seen married couples after 20 years then discovering that they've grown apart and they're no longer compatible. So compatibility isn't this static thing that throughout your entire relationship it stays the same. The importance is if you are growing together emotionally and using those differences to learn more about each other. There might reach a point in your relationship where you realize our differences are too great to bridge that gap. But sometimes you are able to have very big differences and still make it work. There's couples that I've seen that are of completely different religions that find a nice groove and are able to celebrate the differences rather than having those differences tear each other apart.
Yep.
Another point I want to make is kind of a weird thought, but I don't know if you've heard us talk about the good enough mother. This is one of those old psychological concepts that talk about if you did have a parent that was nurturing enough to foster a healthy development in a child. I want to apply this concept to compatibility. There's not going to be anybody that's 100% perfectly compatible. What's important is if they are compatible enough. Are our differences so to where I can see you as a separate individual and still want to be connected with you? Or are they so that I cannot live with this, I cannot tolerate it? So these are decisions and questions that you have to ask yourself throughout relationships and even after the breakup, reflecting back. Maybe this was a deal breaker for your ex. Maybe this was something that they couldn't tolerate or live with. Mm-hmm. So things to consider and different viewpoints to look at. Absolutely.
You're never going to find somebody who you're completely compatible with. I mean, that's just very unlikely to happen. Mm-hmm. Yes, it might happen occasionally, but even people that tend to be really compatible with each other, there are going to be differences that can lead to fighting and arguments and stuff like that. So you have to be aware of it and just understand that you're not necessarily right about your view and they're not necessarily right about theirs, and try and give up that idea that you're right and that the way you see it is right, and just try and balance and understand that people can have different opinions about things, but that doesn't mean you still can't be compatible. And then sometimes there are people that are completely compatible in many, many ways with values and goals and dreams and, how many kids we have and where we're going to live and all these different things, and they still might break up, right? So it's tricky, but you just have to consider it. And one of the reasons we want to talk about compatibility today is because you're probably thinking about how compatible you were with your partner. And maybe your view on it is we were very compatible, but they may see it differently. Mm-hmm. And maybe they haven't even expressed that to you.
Right. And one thing that will always stick with me, this is something that a client had said to me. They were talking about their ex and they were saying, demographically, they are perfect for me. They live locally. They are of my same culture, of my same religion. They mark almost every checkbox. But they were saying that passion, that fuel, that personality, that banter wasn't there. So compatibility is a huge, wide range, and you can have everything perfectly aligned and still there be something missing there, that connection, that presence. So there's a wide range of things that can happen. Mm-hmm. Making sure that you are also true to your values, but also flexible enough to see differences in other people and not see them as threats, but see them as connection points. I love what you were saying about, letting go of that feeling of I have to be right.
Yeah.
We've all heard that quote of you can be right or you can be in a relationship. So sometimes it is that. And it's finding out what can you be flexible with? What are some things that you absolutely cannot be flexible with?
Food for thought. Mm-hmm. Of course, if you want to get our help personally, you can do that on my website, askcraig.net. I do email coaching and I do Skype. Coach Victoria is also available for Skype coaching.
I'm here whenever you're ready to chat.
But that's it for this video. I'm Coach Craig Kenneth.
And I'm Coach Victoria.
And we will talk with you soon.